Hello, my fellow ninjas. I'm not Jonathan, as you can see, but I'm happy to be here hosting this first of our MAPI streams. I'm Robin, Community Engagement Manager. You might know me on Discord, Robin Rambles or Ramble and Romp. I'm not sure what shows up. Keeper of the Calendar. And we are joined today by Josh Adcock, aka Mr. Flip, in our Discord, community star, community extraordinaire, and we're going to talk about APIs. So,
Yippee.
welcome, Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. How about you let everyone know a little bit about you? And
Awesome. Well, thank you. I am the Director of Client Services. Basically, went from just kind of being a technician to my job is to make sure that all of my clients have all the tools and things that they need, and that I am doing what I think we all set out to do and making their life easier so they don't have to think about anything, because most of the time they're not going to anyway.
make sure that things don't break, and if they do, that they understand why they're broken, and that's probably their fault.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, in case you guys, I'm going to put this QR code. In case you are not members of our Discord, you should join our Discord. And the reason why this stream is basically API 101 is because we are celebrating MAPI. Get it? MAPI. Okay. I thought it was clever. And in doing so, we're hosting a contest. We're doing 3 streams this month, and they're all around API. So this first stream with Josh is really about getting started. So I am the stand-in for I'm even worse than that, the like newbie. I know that APIs are important. I don't actually really know. It's gonna be May. I love it. I'm an NSYNC fan. I have NSYNC stuff. You can't see it, but it's up there.
I'm kind of upset that was the reference before the, May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, we're a little, and then Return of the Fifth, but we're a little, yeah. So sorry, Robert. Jonathan is also not yet back from MSP GeekCon, but you heard us. May PI. It was a pun too good to let slip by. Oh, I rhymed. And so we had to get started now. So sorry if you're not back from MSP GeekCon, but this will be available right away to watch back. Anyway, I'm standing in as the person who understands that APIs are important, but has no clue why, and what I can actually, how to take advantage of it, and why I would want to. So Josh was kind enough to, as someone who has gone relatively recently, as in he can still remember going through and figuring out APIs, to stand in and like help us kind of talk about it. So Josh, starting from the beginning, since this is API 101, like, what is an API? And as a technician, why is it something that you think people should invest learning in?
So one of the best ways I've found to kind of put API in almost layman terms is think of it like a restaurant, right? You as the customer, the user, place an order or a request that goes to the kitchen or your endpoint. At that point, the server takes whatever your request is and brings it back to your table. That's your food or your data. It makes many boring and monotonous tasks so much easier to do because you could use PowerShell to create a script to run API calls, to pull your data, build your reports, or to remove customers, things like that may take a little bit longer. It may not seem like a lot if you're sitting down, having to log into Ninja and remove a customer or remove a device from Ninja. But if you've got to remove 500 devices, that's a whole different story. So the API makes it a little more possible to get that done. Also makes it possible to take, for example, what sent me down the API path was, we've following, like with Ninja reporting, we've been with Ninja for a really long time, and that's really always been the one place that didn't quite. And we understand it's not exactly, the wheelhouse for Ninja, but it's something that we needed better from, and we knew it wasn't super priority at the time. So we utilized Ninja's API so that I was able to use a third-party feature to turn that data into reports that we felt comfortable sending to our client visually, that looked good and represented kind of the tone and the brand that we wanted to have. So API really lets you, we've all been in that situation where you may have somebody that sends you your orders or things that they want you to do, and they're not really possible things inside of what you're doing. API, in most cases, will make those things possible. So it's very helpful just to extend the abilities of what you're already using if it's available in that manner.
I love that. And so it also feels like APIs allow you to, like you said, broaden the scope of what you are offering your clients, but also format it in a way that makes sense to what you're trying to do, and get these things formatted, or get the data that you need to do the thing that you like see in your brain. And so in the way that, so in the ways that they help you do that, where are the kind of, I guess, let's say, like the beginning steps, like when you're starting to think, oh, I would really like my reports to look like this, or I need my reports to grab this sort of data or something that is makes sense to my client. What's like the first steps that got you thinking, okay, an API is a good way to do that? And then the minimum, I'm sure, like the first reports you drew using API look vastly different than what you're doing now. So like kind of that early stage.
Right. So for me, really, it was kind of ended up being a necessity. So we hired someone to try to create these reports for us, and I kind of saw what he was doing, and he was just overcomplicating, trying to do a whole bunch of things, and it was just taking a ton of time and a ton of money, and it just was never getting where it wanted to be. So I'd kind of seen, what he was doing, and the same thing while watching kind of what he was doing. I obviously have participated much in the Discord community, so I was just kind of watching what other people were talking about and the scripting, and kind of just ended up putting two and two together that the API was probably going to be a tool that was able for me. Now, in the beginning, definitely, I think the toughest part for me was that I could not wrap my brain around the authentication flow and what exactly it was that I was doing. It definitely took some time and some assistance. In fact, I always give kudos to Ninja because, out of all of our vendors, it's the only one that I ever submitted a support ticket, and they put me on the phone with somebody on the API team, and they walked me through step by step getting it done in a third-party tool. So they were able to help me get my foot on the ground and started from there. After that, I just spent a lot of time making API calls in Postman, just pulling data to see what it looked like and how I could manipulate it in a way that I needed it to be, not necessarily the way that it just gave it to me. Or, from there, kind of stepped into stringing those API calls together using PowerShell scripts so that I could pull multiple endpoints at a time and build my data out the way that I wanted to, as opposed to just, here's what Ninja's giving me, figure out how to make it work. Well, no, I could pull bits and pieces from 3 different endpoints to build one report or dashboard visualization or whatever. So for me, it was really, in terms of getting started, it was a process of many different things, mostly necessity. In terms of obstacles to getting started, really, it was more fear of breaking something. But I think that's something everybody kind of has when they start trying to do something new, and especially in a work environment or an environment where breaking something could be very bad. But that's pretty much why I always had only Git calls for several months. I didn't try to actually manipulate anything in Ninja. I just wanted the data because I didn't fully understand what was going on. Most days I still don't, Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends. But it's a learning curve for sure. It's just kind of a journey. You got to put one foot in front of the other and if you do break something, know what you did so you can go back and fix it.
Yeah. I will say that's one of the things that is like so great about our Discord, again, to, not to plug, but plug. And like we have an API channel where people are just saying like, I'm trying to do this thing, and you can crowdsource expertise. And it's not just with Ninja. There's, it's kind of product agnostic. So people will talk about third-party tools or something completely different. And if someone has like that knowledge they're willing to share, then they do. So what do you think would be, for someone like me, the best way to get started? Like, are there resources or things that you really leaned heavily on, or like YouTube? I love a good YouTube explainer sometimes, and I know like documentation is always kind of hit or miss.
So definitely YouTube. I found very quickly that most vendors with APIs, if you do reach out to them in support, they will in many cases tell you that they don't support their API, that it's on you, figure it out. Or they the other thing I've come across a lot of times is for me, the hardest part, I guess, in finding the resources was finding the resources that were designed to explain to someone who had no idea what they were doing, as opposed to someone just assuming that they have the knowledge already and getting super technical. So I did go through a lot of YouTube videos. Ultimately, what really helped me to get started, once I understood how to make the connection with the API and what was possible, was the tool Postman. A lot of people are using PowerShell and things like that. Postman gives you just, a graphical interface to work with it. So you get that graphic representation of what it is you're doing. To an extent, it can actually build reports out for you based on what it pulls. But for me, it helped to really see what was happening, as opposed to, I'm not a scripter or a developer. It's not something that's ever been strong in my wheelhouse. In fact, it confuses me more times than not. But having that visual representation in something like Postman really helped me to understand what the API was doing. So then I could understand how to utilize the information that I was receiving back from the API.
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. There is a question and I don't know. No. Okay. So this is getting me like excited a little bit, just because I think even someone like me, my focus is on the community, right? So but our community is basically housed in Discord. There's all these things that I would like to do or be able to do to try to make that connection between the like documents that we have and the questions that we see often easier to bring up, right? Instead of like taxing community members. We talk about this all the time,
Right.
Taxing the stars and stuff to kind of answer frequently asked questions and things. And one of the things in one of our last conversations we talked about was like having that kind of using API or a webhook or something like that, that if someone asks a question, I can easily like pull in the data from our documents or
Right, from
somewhere
a
else.
knowledge base and have it readily available.
Right. And so I think that kind of what you were saying of even just with like the reporting, right? There's a gap that you need to fill, and then you're trying to figure out the best way to do it. And utilizing API is that like step into kind of filling that gap and doing it yourself. I do also, because I'm also terrified of breaking things, get that kind of fear. So is there a way in which I can experiment or do something, sandboxing something without fully breaking it? And what was your kind of workaround until you felt like, okay, I'm confident that I'm not going to actually break things, and I feel more confident pulling things in?
Well, the biggest thing is coming to the understanding that, a get call is only going to get information. It's not going to remove it or move it or break it or do anything. So that's why I think starting at like almost a reporting level where you're just pulling information is really the place to start, and then work your way into the point that you're posting information or deleting information or things of this nature. Once you actually have an understanding of what's happening with the API between point A and point B and how the endpoints work, and when you add a modifier to a link to get a specific piece of information, then once you have that understanding of how to pull that information, it definitely kills some of that fear of I'm going to go in and delete the wrong thing, because that you can get the information without being destructive. I do find that it also, many API documentations usually have in pretty large red letters towards the top, hey, if you use these commands, you could cause yourself a very big problem. So that's helpful as kind of just a reminder to watch what you're doing when you're working with the API, and you don't have anything to worry about. But, it's much like the first time you drive a car. You don't want to wreck the car as soon as you take the car out the first time. You've never driven a car before. So that fear's there. It's just understanding, how to work with it and what you're doing.
Okay. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I've been driving for a while. I still am not perfect. Little dings in my car will show you. So the best way to start learning and experimenting, you think, is just through getting started and trying and things like that. What are some of the core basics that you think are necessary? I know you're like not big on scripting, so it doesn't seem like you need to have a scripting background or even expertise, but are there some things that you think, like, if you're not comfortable with this, don't even start to play around with API, like go do that first?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that as far as getting started, like I mentioned before, starting with the read-only GET requests, things that are safe, things that, the worst you're going to get is an error that tells you you're at the wrong place, or, you're using the wrong syntax or whatever. Starting out with something like Postman or Insomnia is another one. It's a graphical interface, allows you to make your connections and really just put the connection details in and tell it what you want, and it'll go and find it a lot of times. Or, you still need to know what endpoint you're looking for. But even going to that, reading the documentation and reading it slowly and thoroughly. I find even myself often when I come across documentation or something, I just start doing that thing where I'm scanning for the words I'm looking for. But I've probably, passed 15 things that were either warnings or like, hey, you might want to consider this before you do this. So, most vendors, Ninja included, have pretty complete API documentation for the most part, that will tell you everything that you need to know. And I find that if you pay attention to that documentation, read it carefully and slowly, that it'll make more sense to it than if you're just looking to, if you're somebody that's just looking to solve a really quick problem really fast and you have no idea where you're doing, API is probably not the route to go unless you already have an understanding of how it works and what it's doing. Because you will end up typically getting a bunch of JSON responses that you may not understand or know what to do with or how to do. That's one of the other things that's great practice is, practicing parsing through JSON responses so that you understand when it it's not just giving you plain text that says you've got 12 workstations and here are their names. It's in a structured JSON document typically that you're receiving that. So just kind of practicing understanding how JSON works, parsing through the documentation, being able to read will give you a better idea of trying to put that together if you're going into another tool, and trying to put a report together or integrate two tools across, so that they communicate with each other properly, to do something they don't necessarily do out of the box. Other than that, realistically, just try to think practically. Start with real world tasks. You don't necessarily need to jump to, solving the biggest, baddest problem that's in your office by using the API. Just something that makes your day easier, whether it's, like I said, offboarding an MSP or offboarding clients or needing to be able to remove things, or even just pulling information to be able to give to your clients of, you have A perfect example recently, you know, we all know Windows 11 is coming to an end. We've got, I don't know, probably 500-600 workstations that we deal with. Some of them are still Windows 10 devices, and some of them may be able to upgrade. Some of them need to be replaced, but now's the time that we need to be letting our clients know so they can plan. API was something that I was able to use to go and pull the custom field information I had already created to tell me what Windows 10 devices could go to 11, what couldn't. Just export that out into a CSV file. That saved me hours of going through every single organization and every computer to just physically go look at the capable or not capable field. I just pull a report in 5 minutes and then draft an email, send them out. I just spent 45 minutes doing something that if I had to sit there manually going through every one would have probably taken me 2 days.
Right.
So it saves a lot of time, and that's finding things like that that are real world and practical things that you can spend 30 minutes, because let's be honest, your boss probably isn't going to be super excited if you spend 4 hours trying to learn how to do something to save 30 minutes that you could have already finished. So it's important to start with real world expectations of what you're going to accomplish.
Yeah. This is, to me, a good place to plug that we're currently doing an API challenge in our Discord. If you go into the contest channel, and the requirement is really just to share something. It's using the NinjaOne API, but that does things like that, time saving, and pulling that Windows 11 example that you gave. It's like a great example of just like, this is going to reduce repetitive task and manual work. Like, this is going to show us something that we were going to have to do, and probably keep kicking the can down the road and putting it off a little bit because it is manual and tedious. But it gives me that sense of like, an API is a good way of going about that thing where you're like, I'm dreading this thing. And then if you actually use an API, like, the thing that you're dreading actually only took you 15 minutes. If you can think of other things of that nature to the viewers watching, that is something that would be great to add to submit to our contest, and a winner can get a Nintendo Steam 2 or Switch, a Nintendo Switch 2. So fancy. We also are going to have some other prizes and stuff, but just wanted to plug that. It's going on now, and it will be going on for the rest of the month. So you have time to play around and think about different submissions that you could come up with that are just like great examples of using the API in creative and innovative ways, or not even that innovative, but essential. I'm also wondering too, like, oh, here we go. Nick Harvey is asking, like, he still doesn't know why he would care about API. So as a technician, as someone working day to day with endpoints and trying to, wrangle all of these different tasks that you have to do every day, why would I care about API?
Well, I personally care about API because I'm a very, very busy person with a very, very long laundry list of things that I have to do on a regular basis, and that only ever grows. It never shrinks. Doesn't matter how quick or fast I do it. So, for me, it's a giant stress saver to be able to complete something in 10 minutes instead of spending multiple hours. It also, specifically in our use case, to go back to the reporting thing, it gives me the ability to build things that fit my brand, to be able to provide to my clients, to specifically the owners of the clients on a monthly basis. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to MSP or really anything IT, it goes back to the old saying of, if nothing's wrong, why are we paying you? And if something's wrong, why are we paying you? Ultimately, somebody's going to want to know why they're spending money every single month to pay for an MSP to handle their IT services when they don't perceive anything's going wrong, and they don't have any idea of what's happening in the background and what is going wrong that they're just not seeing if you're doing your job correctly. So at the end of the day, it helps to provide value to your service as an MSP by giving them reports that not only fit your brand and keep you in their mind so that they're not having issue, they're not looking, oh, well, this guy's $20 cheaper than you, let me go to this guy. It allows you to keep yourself on brand. It allows you to provide the information to the client on the other end of what we are doing for you. So they're not asking the question of why are we paying you?
Yeah. And a lot of people in the chat are talking about reporting and the exact what the kind of out of the box reporting for different products, even Ninja, give you versus like the customization that you're allowed to get utilizing API. So for Nick, owner of an MSP, in the chat, they're like letting them know being able to pull those reports and compliance. Benjamin Gags brings up compliance specific reporting. Is that something that you've had to deal with, Josh? I know we talked relatively recently, a few streams ago, about CMMC and FedRAMP, and how intense and specific a lot of those compliance requirements are. Is that something that you've had to deal with, and how has using API or your knowledge of API helped, if so?
I mean, at this point, not yet, just because we're barely dipping our toe in that water at this point. But I noticed saying, that you have a client that doesn't ever read a report. Well, I mean, ultimately, we have many clients that probably don't read the reports either. But the important part is that I provide them a report. So when they come to me and they ask me what it is that I'm providing them as a service, I have it there ready and available to them. And in terms of, isn't that what you pay Ninja for? That's kind of an obsolete question. But one thing I found, and the reason that API is important to me, is most vendors are giving you reports that are relevant to you internally, such as financial reports and things that you wouldn't show to your clients anyway. For the most part, those aren't really designed out of the box to be reports that are going to your client. But they do oftentimes have data that can be valuable to your client and data that you can give to your client. So having the API in your tool belt is something to allow that to happen. If that doesn't work for you, then I mean, there's an exception to every rule, I suppose, but it works perfectly fine for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. So we're getting some name dropping of different things. You mentioned Postman, Jimmy Brazy saying Roost RPA was how they started working with APIs. Chris Thomas says Roost ME integrations. Are there, you think, I know I'm gonna start checking out Postman after we get off of here, but are there things that you think are great spots to, like, I know you were saying like that graphic interface and stuff, that will really help walk you through and get really comfortable with API calls? And what do you recommend for people?
For me, I really just started out with pulling lists of, starting out with just pulling full lists of all the workstations that we manage and the information that was available off of that endpoint. And then as you get more comfortable with how that works, you can start working with the device filters and things so that you can filter it down by organization or by specifically Windows 10 devices or whatever it is that you're looking for. And you just kind of start at the top and work your way through the filtering for your particular use case. I think a lot of the standoffishness that I've seen in other people that just kind of want to ignore API and act like it doesn't do any good or that it's a waste of time ultimately is not understanding how to filter everything to get exactly what you need. And you just see a sea of information that maybe one thing in that whole sea is what you actually need. But that's the place to start so that you understand what information you are actually receiving and then what you can do with that information. Ultimately, what you can do with that information comes down to you and your creativity as a person and what you need at that particular point in time. So there's no perfect place to start necessarily. For some person, it may be something entirely different. But for me, that's what worked, was starting just at a top level, understanding what it was that I was pulling in and how to interpret what I was pulling in before I tried to actually use what I was pulling in to do anything.
Yeah. So it seems like making sure that you know exactly kind of what information you want so that you can't, that it seems like it is possible to get overwhelmed by the data and overwhelmed by what you're pulling. So it's really important to kind of know what you want and what your end goal is so that you can really like dig deep and like pull the or focus in on the data that is most relevant to you and what your goal is.
Right. So like a lot of people use SIP, the Cyber Drain Integrated Partner. I know a lot of Ninja users use that. And realistically, that's just a graphical interface over a whole bunch of API calls that are written to work between Microsoft. So, I mean, that right there, I've never seen anyone hardly at all ever complain about SIP. I've seen Microsoft recommend people use SIP, and Microsoft doesn't ever recommend anybody use a third party anything to interface with them. So that's a pretty amazing feat to pull off, and that's pretty much all API. That's one of the more advanced examples of API that I can possibly think of, and that's something that I happily spend money every month to use, because at the end of the day, it makes my job 1,000 times easier to be able to handle all of my companies in one place. Same reason we use Ninja, because what better than saving time? Who wants to spend multiple hours doing something? Not only that, to go back from an owner standpoint, it's costing you a lot more money to spend 2 days on a project that could have been done in 30 minutes. And you could have finished 15 projects in those 2 days. So at the end of the day, it's all really about simplicity and just kind of narrowing down the focus of your tasks so that you can focus your skill set and knowledge into more pressing problems instead of day-to-day, just kind of paper pushing tasks.
Yeah. Okay. So another question that I have, we talked about, making sure that you're using API in a relevant way, and that, maybe your boss isn't going to be super excited with you spending hours learning this thing to accomplish something that could have been done manually just as quickly. Is cost also something that we have to kind of think through with some of these things? I mean, like you said, you happily pay for SIP. I'm sure Postman, Roost, all of these things. Where is the like kind of return on investment? Are you able to talk about that at all?
I mean, to be entirely honest, API specific, I have not spent, the company has not spent a dime. Postman is pretty much a free tool for the most part. I mean, you can get the paid version, but you can do what you need to do in that aspect, and in the learning aspect, you can do at no cost. I'm not super familiar with Roost. I know Insomnia has kind of a free, they always have some kind of limitation, but those I always used as learning tools. Once I learned, went to PowerShell. I mean, I have not come across a vendor that charges me to use their API. I know some exist, but for our use case, really utilizing API has been a very valuable tool that has cost us very little money. None at all that I can think of. I mean, yeah, we pay for SIP, but that's not really my tool. That's just a tool I'm using someone else created. So yes, I'll happily pay for that. But in terms of what I've done, it hasn't cost me a penny. It's just been, which is even better, because in our world, typically any tool that is saving you time is going to cost you some kind of money. So ultimately for me, API is more money savings than anything, because if I get my technicians also utilizing API to do check on updates or check on, devices that failed updates or things like that, instead of spending 2 hours in the morning clicking through every single client to try to figure out what failed and why it failed, they could just do it in 15 minutes in the morning, running a pre-made script that already does it for them every week. That's 15 minutes versus 2 hours. That's time I'm paying them to do something that is actually going to be outside making money. as opposed to something that's just a maintenance task that ultimately costs me money in the form of labor.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention or to respond to the chat here on the side about examples. So this is 101. We're really talking about like here why API is important, why we should, someone who does not know or has not had an experience working with APIs, why they should start this. I'm sure Josh can probably give us some examples in Discord after this, but we will be having another stream next week, which is a 201, which will show more examples. And then the week after that, we'll be talking with some of our NinjaOne product managers about the NinjaOne API specifically, and they will definitely have some examples there. We're not going to be showing any live examples today. This is more just a conversation about why this is important. And then to answer questions for people who are not currently using API in their day-to-day work and why they should and how they can get started. So
if you are interested in a live example, at Grafana's website, I actually have just search NinjaOne dashboard. It's published, it's public, it's live. Many, many people have used it. It's there. I mean, it's a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about and how we created the reporting aspect for being able to add value to our clients. And that particular dashboard is one that we just keep on a TV in here. So it's easier if somebody's out physically working on a device in a workbench or something, they can see when a ticket comes in simply looking at the dashboard. So, I mean, it's already got all the existing API calls that are necessary. You just punch in your keys and ready to go. So, I mean, it's there, but like Robin mentioned, was not the intent of today. So I did not bring that ready to go.
Right. So at the Grafana website, search NinjaOne examples, and then there you go. And I'll add links and stuff in our Discord afterwards, just to point people in the right direction. So Joe here asks or says about recently running into a situation where they needed to update a field in our contact details. It ended up being over 2,000 fields to update, and API can do that faster than manual entry. Are there ways in which can you give us some examples of times in which something that you think, oh, we just need to update this one field, or we just need to do this thing, and it ends up being a much larger project or scope? And then how does working with API come into play for those things?
I mean, like I said, it goes kind of back to what I was mentioned earlier when we used it to definitely truncate the process of letting clients know who needs to replace devices, who needs to upgrade devices. We utilized it as well to some lesser degree back when Log4j happened, to be able to pull results of scripts that we run across all the machines to check for Log4j into a report for rapid viewing, so we weren't having to go through individually. The thing I found, a lot of people that don't necessarily look to API as a tool will spend a lot of time in a graphic interface clicking between screen and screen and screen, and you can utilize it really for just about anything that you would be doing clicking through that screen, and it's just a matter of hitting enter. 9 out of 10 times I find scripts that somebody's already written. I've kind of got a rule of thumb. If I come across the problem, there's a really good chance that I'm not the first person on the planet that ever come across that problem. The internet tends to be very helpful for that. So a lot of times I can find whatever I need already created. So I'm not spending a bunch of time trying to figure out, like I said, I'm not a scripter. I'm not a developer. That's not really my strong suit. It interests me, but I don't have time to sit down and try to learn it really at this point. So I spend a lot of time repurposing things I find that other people were either doing something similar or had the same problem that I had, and they needed to resolve that problem. So I don't have any specific example in super large data format. Again, we aren't a huge company. We're 5 people. So the amount of time that I can save, for being 5 people with 50 clients and 600 endpoints or something. Saving time is a huge deal for me. So that's really what I utilize the API for, more so as saving time whenever that comes up.
Great. So as we're kind of winding down, I just have a few more questions. What are some key do's and don'ts that you would give to me, a beginner?
Okay. Well, as far as key do's and don'ts, I would say try. Just kind of put it out there. Just sit down and write a list of things that you think you could make easier by learning how to manipulate with the API on the things that make your day-to-day. I'm trying to think really of the don'ts. Honestly, the don'ts is, for me, don't not read the documentation. Don't assume from, poor documentation that you're doing something incorrectly. Don't be afraid to reach out to people to help you with that. Lastly, don't ignore when a section of documentation tells you that this is dangerous and could lead you to a big problem, because it absolutely can. You can send the wrong API call or click the wrong button in Postman and not have it set to get, have it set to delete, and end up just deleting all of your organizations or whatever you may be working with. So, don't not pay attention is probably the biggest don't that I could think of when it comes to the API. For the most part, if you're just pulling data and getting data, you don't have any real concerns. The only do's I can say is just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. That's what I had to do. I fumbled around for a long time trying to find any other way or any other program that could just do it for me and this, that, and the other. And then I realized it's sitting right in front of me and everybody's using it every day. Every application that you use is using it every day. So you might as well leverage the tools that exist. And going back to cost, especially if they don't cost you anything.
Definitely. Okay. So I want to thank you. We're going to start to wind down here, but I wanted to just give a reminder to everyone on this stream. Next week, next Wednesday, same time, same YouTube, we will be speaking with some more community members, and this will be our API 201, which is really leveling up, taking some of these things that Josh has mentioned here and putting them into practice, and really getting comfortable.
That's the one I'm excited for.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of them.
I could listen to Mikey talk about API way longer than I can listen to me talk about API, so it's okay.
Mikey, homosexual in our Discord, he's a star. He's got a lot of things in his GitHub and things working around API. Same with I think he's still Craig Codes in our who has a public API wrapper. I don't know what that means because I am a community manager, but you guys know what that means. And everyone has been very excited about it, and it's been very useful. So we will be doing more deep dives and examples next week, same time. And then the week after that, we will be talking about NinjaOne API specifically. You can mention, let me just, you can contact me or all of the community team in Discord using the @community_managers tag or @community_team tag, I believe is what that is. And Nick, I will reach out to you separately. I don't really want to put my contact information in YouTube chat, but I will find you and I'll reach out to you. Thank you, Jimmy. There you go. That's who I am in our Discord. And then again, we are currently running a contest. So there is a contest channel in our Discord, and we're just really asking for these examples that everyone is talking about. Things that will save you time, things that will surface insights or make things more visible to people, clients or coworkers, other parts of your team that they may not have visibility into, and you just want to give them a visibility into insights and things that you're seeing in your day to day. integrations, automations. There are tons of different ways. And then, as Josh had said, just like using that creativity of there's something that I think would be useful, something I think would be interesting, and I'm doing it with API. So any kind of examples, share them in that contest, and winners, we'll have a couple of like different things. Our main winner, we have some of our internal product managers serving as judges. You can receive a Nintendo Switch 2, and then we have some other really cool prizes, swag, and all of those good things. So all of that can be found in our Discord. You can use that QR code right here, scan that and join. Go to ninjaone.com/community, and you can join from there as well. Thank you so much, Josh. Let us know a little bit. I mean, you can also, Josh is very active in our Discord community, Mr. Flip, if you need that. And he's always up to answering questions or he's like always in the conversations of things. And he just also provided us a link to that Grafana site or link that he was talking about earlier. So any last words, anything you want to leave the people with?
Just give it a shot, honestly. I mean, API will make your life easier, whether you doubt it or not. API can make your life so much easier. It did for me. It's what I enjoy about it. And I am ultimately excited for 2.01. There you go. I was going to say 2.0, but I also agree. Somebody mentioned earlier that you probably should have put a space in the MAPI or like some denoter, because I also originally thought Raspberry Pi until I read the description of the contest. I was like, we're doing a Raspberry Pi contest? Awesome. But that was not the case.
Well, we could do a Raspberry Pi contest.
Yeah. I guess we can make a Raspberry Pi to do API.
Maybe. I was thinking afterwards too, they were like, maybe you should have changed the color on the A, the P, and the I to like,
Either way, it came across now, right?
Yeah, I think maybe it's something you just have to say out loud. I said it and I thought I was so clever, but I will take that on. I want to also end with these little do's and don't tips from Jimmy. You can't automate a process that doesn't exist. Add how much time you're saving to show value to management, and start small. Also, in terms of like, if you're dealing with someone, especially management things, who think in terms of numbers, time saving always translates into money savings. If you say it's going to cost, my salary is this much, or I make this much hourly, and it takes me this much time to do this one thing, and I've saved this much time by using API, so now it only takes me this much time. All of those hours are now being filled up with not more, but like other things that will also save time, make money. So there's always ways in which you can package.
The way I've always looked at it, and even the way I put it across my boss that owns the company, is if the less time I'm spending doing paperwork or small, easily repeatable tasks, the more time I'm out there talking to our clients and getting them to give us more money, which ultimately is kind of my job. So everybody's job. That's what we're here for. And so that's why I like the API, because it gives me more time to do what I like to do, which is interface with the clients and do that from that end. So and less time sitting behind my computer, staring at it and drinking coffee, banging my head on the desk because things aren't doing what I want them to do. Saving
yourself from burnout as well, because I always say that those repeatable small task things are the things that make you forget why you like doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you again, Josh, for sharing your expertise and your journey with the APIs. And join us again next week for 201, where we dive deeper. And we will see you on the internet.
Awesome.
Bye, ninjas.
See ya.
Also, go Arsenal. I don't care if you don't care, but it's very important to my future happiness that Arsenal wins today. So